In a junkyard on the edge of the city, a homeless black boy rummages for scrap, alone and forgotten, but his night takes a dangerous turn when he overhears two kidnappers searching for a girl who's escaped. Moments later he finds her, wealthy, feverish, and hiding in fear. With nothing but an old bike and a brave heart, the boy risks everything to save her. What he doesn't know is that this one act of kindness will change his life forever. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. We love to hear your thoughts. It was near sundown, and the sky hung low like a bruised peach, bleeding its last orange light onto the cracked concrete. The city was winding down, but not this corner of it. Not the forgotten edge, where broken windows stared out like blind eyes and rusted fences leaned like tired old men. A place people drove past, not through. A place where dreams didn't land. Just under the shadow of an old overpass, beside a scrapyard that reeked of metal and burnt oil, a boy was digging through garbage cans. He moved slowly, deliberately, hands weathered beyond his 12 years, calloused from lifting more weight than a child should. His shirt, once white, was now the color of ash and stitched in places by hand, the hem uneven. He wore a pair of shoes that had long given up the fight, soles flapping with each step. Yet on his wrist, tied carefully like a badge of honor, was a strip of cloth his mother had once sewn. Sky blue, now faded, but sacred. His name was Malik, dark-skinned with wide, alert eyes that scanned the world like it owed him a threat, because it usually did. Malik had lived on the streets for almost a year since the accident. Since the fire. Since the world had closed its doors and left him with a battered old bicycle, his father's army jacket, and a heart that refused to stop caring. That evening he wasn't looking for food. He was looking for cans. Aluminum was worth a few cents apiece, and he needed 5 more to buy cough syrup. Not for himself. He'd heard the boy 3 crates down, hacking so hard at night it scared the rats away. Malik had already given him half a loaf of bread 2 days ago. That's just how he was. He leaned over a bin near the fence when he heard it. "You had one job, man. One, and you let her go?" 2 men. One tall, wearing a dirty red varsity jacket, frayed and stained. His cap was turned backwards and a cigarette trembled between yellowed fingers. The other was shorter, stockier, with a twitch in his left eye and a voice that cracked like gravel under boots. Both reeked of cheap beer and bad choices. "Don't blame me, Trey. You're the one who left the back door open. Man, if we don't find her, we're dead. She's worth a fortune." Malik didn't move, didn't breathe. He dropped low behind a dumpster, heart drumming like a trapped bird. He peeked through a slit in the rusted wall and saw them pacing, scanning the yard. One of them kicked a pile of scrap, cursed under his breath. "She couldn't have gone far. Sick little thing, probably passed out somewhere. We check every damned corner if we have to." Their voices faded as they stalked deeper into the junkyard. But the words, "she's worth a fortune," clung to the air like poison. Malik's jaw tightened. He had seen enough pain in his short life to know what those men were. He clutched the handlebars of his bike, chipped blue paint, bent frame, a chain that skipped if you pedaled too hard. He didn't ride it for fun. He rode it because walking meant you had too much time to think. He could leave now, get away, clean. But something made him stay. Maybe it was the way his mother used to say, "If you walk away when someone's crying, you hear that cry forever." So he moved. Slowly, silently, weaving through the maze of debris like a ghost. He checked behind crates, under broken pallets, through a burned-out van with no doors. And then he heard it. A cough. Small. Weak. Like someone trying not to be heard. He turned toward the sound, following it with careful steps. Behind a pile of rusted sheet metal and a torn mattress he found her. A girl. Maybe 6 or 7, pale skin flushed red with fever, blonde hair matted with dirt, lips dry and cracked. She wore a dress that had once been fancy, pink silk with tiny pearls at the collar, but now it clung to her like a ghost of comfort. One shoe on, the other missing. She looked up at him, blinking slowly. Are they gone?" she whispered, voice barely more than breath. Malik nodded, crouching beside her. His face was calm, steady, though inside his chest his heart ached. She looked like his little cousin, the one who never made it out of the fire. "We gotta move," he said softly. "It ain't safe here." I don't feel good," she whimpered. "My head hurt." Malik reached out carefully, placing the back of his hand on her forehead. "Burning hot. You got a fever, girl." He looked over his shoulder. No sign of the men, yet. Without a second thought, he scooped her up, light as a bundle of rags, and walked her to his bike. It was the only thing he owned worth anything, and even it creaked like bones with every movement. But tonight it would carry more than scrap. He wrapped the back seat in his coat for cushioning and gently lifted her into it, and started pedaling toward the one place he knew no one would look, his hideout, his home. As he pushed forward, tires crunching gravel, he whispered to her like a brother, like a protector. "Hang on, little one, I got you. No one's gonna hurt you now." And just like that, the night swallowed them both. A forgotten boy and a hunted girl, on a broken bike in a broken world, with only each other, and the tiniest flame of hope still burning. The girl barely stirred as Malik pedaled through the uneven gravel alley behind the train yard. His legs burned from pushing his old bike up the slight slope, but he didn't dare stop. Not yet. The sky had dimmed into a heavy charcoal gray, the kind that promised rain or something worse, and every gust of wind rattled the dented frame of the bike like a warning. He took the long route, away from the streets with working lights or too many people. Even at that hour, the wrong glance could bring questions he didn't have time to answer, and answers he didn't trust to give. With one hand steadying the handlebars and the other gripping the edge of the basket where the girl lay huddled in his jacket, Malik pushed forward, guided by instinct, not destination. He reached the underpass near the old textile warehouse, his spot. It wasn't much, just a tarp tied to 2 columns, some wood pallets flattened for a floor, and a milk crate turned sideways for storage. But it was dry, hidden, and his. Carefully he lifted the girl out of the basket. Her breath was shallow, her skin burning. Malik laid her on his only blanket, threadbare but clean, and brushed her hair from her face. "Hey," he whispered, watching her eyelids flutter. "You're safe now, you hear me?" No reply, just a faint whimper before she slipped back into fevered sleep. He stood there for a moment, staring down at her, then exhaled slowly through his nose. He had to get medicine. Now. He grabbed the small tin can hidden under his makeshift shelf. His savings. He dumped the coins out, counted twice. Not enough. He needed at least $4 more. Malik looked toward the horizon, where the last sliver of sun dipped behind the skyline. He didn't hesitate. He mounted the bike again, legs aching, and pedaled toward the 24-hour pharmacy 5 blocks away. Each turn of the wheel echoed louder in his mind than it did on the street, not because of noise, but because of what it meant, that he was trading everything he had to help someone he didn't even know. At the counter, the pharmacist raised an eyebrow when he saw the boy, dark-skinned, dirty, panting. Malik kept his gaze low, avoided eye contact. He pointed to the bottle of children's fever reducer and pushed the coins forward. "This enough?" His voice was hoarse, unsure but firm. The man frowned, counted. "You're short." Malik's shoulders sank. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the old wristband his mother made, hesitated, then placed it on the counter. "Isn't this worth anything?" The pharmacist looked at the strip of blue cloth, then at the boy. For a long moment, nothing. Then the man slid the bottle toward Malik and pocketed the money. "Get going, kid." He didn't smile, didn't scold, just turned and walked away. By the time Malik returned, the girl was shivering under the tarp, her forehead damp with sweat. He uncapped the bottle with trembling fingers and coaxed her upright. She blinked, dazed and weak, her voice barely audible. "Are you an angel?" Malik snorted. "Nah, angels don't wear shoes with duct tape." He tilted the spoon to her lips and waited. She sipped, coughed, then leaned into him, exhausted. He stayed there, sitting beside her as the night thickened around them. The city buzzed somewhere far away, but in that quiet space it was just them. A girl with a name he didn't know, and a boy with no name anyone remembered. Hours passed. He dozed lightly, waking at every sound. Once he thought he heard footsteps, male voices, a shout in the distance. He tensed, peered out beyond the columns, but saw nothing. Still, he didn't sleep again. He kept watch. At dawn, the first rays of light crawled across the tarp and fell on the girl's face. She stirred, coughed, then opened her eyes, this time with more clarity. She saw Malik, blinked once, then twice. "It wasn't a dream," she whispered, voice steadier. He looked up from where he was tying the tarp tighter. "Nope," he replied, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "I'm still here, unfortunately." She sat up slowly, her hands trembling, eyes scanning the small shelter. She looked down at the blanket, at the jacket wrapped around her, then at the half-eaten crackers Malik had left beside her. For a moment her lower lip quivered. She was about to cry. But then she caught herself, straightened, cleared her throat. "My name is Emily," she said with an odd kind of formality, like someone who'd been taught that introductions mattered no matter where you were. I think I need to go home." Malik crouched beside her, voice softer now. "Where's home?" She furrowed her brow. "I don't know the way, but I remember the address. I remember the numbers." That's when he knew. This wasn't going to be over yet. Taking care of her for a night was one thing. Getting her back across the city without anyone noticing, without getting caught, with men still out there possibly looking for her was another. His hands curled slightly on his knees, his jaw tightened, but when he looked back at her, pale and fragile but determined, he nodded. "I'll get you there," he said quietly. "But we gotta be smart, real smart." And with that promise, the real journey began. For a long while they sat in silence. The faint hum of the city had started to stir. Distant buses, dogs barking, the whir of a garbage truck on the main road a block over. Malik could feel it in his bones. Daylight meant attention, and attention was dangerous, not just for him, but especially for her. She was too clean underneath the dirt, too out of place in this part of town, even in her ragged state. People would notice, and the wrong ones might remember. He glanced sideways at Emily, who was now trying to tie her hair back with trembling fingers. She was wearing his oversized jacket like a blanket, but the delicate trim of her pink dress still peeked out beneath it. Her skin, though pale and still flushed from fever, was starting to regain some color, but to Malik she looked like a walking target. His mind raced. She couldn't go out like this, not if they wanted to make it across half the city, not if they wanted to survive this without getting stopped, or worse, caught. "I need you to trust me," Malik said suddenly, standing up and pulling out a torn duffel bag from behind a stack of wood. Emily looked up, blinking. "With what?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he began pulling out clothes. His clothes. Torn jeans, a sweatshirt 2 sizes too big, a knit cap with holes. He tossed them beside her, then looked at her seriously. "We're going to switch it up. No one's going to recognize you like this." Emily hesitated. Her hands brushed the fabric like it might bite her. Then she looked at Malik's face, his steady, unblinking stare, and something in her softened. She nodded slowly. He turned around to give her privacy, arms crossed tightly across his chest, staring at the graffiti on the concrete pillar in front of him. It said, "No one sees us here." He swallowed. When she finished, she tapped him on the shoulder. He turned and looked at her. His old sweatshirt hung on her like a curtain, the sleeves covering her hands completely. The jeans were tied at the waist with an old shoelace. Her hair, tucked into the beanie, made her almost unrecognizable. But the eyes were the same, bright and trusting in a way that made his throat tighten. He gave her a once-over, then nodded. "Good. Now walk like you belong." She giggled. Just a little, but it faded quickly. "I still don't know where we are," she admitted, "or how far my house is." Malik crouched and dug into his duffel again, this time pulling out a crumpled city map torn from an old phone book. You said your address was—" Malik recited the numbers carefully. Malik's finger hovered over the map, tracing invisible lines. "That's over in Glen Ridge," he muttered. "That's like 20 blocks, maybe more." Emily tilted her head. "Is that far?" Malik smiled without humor. "Far enough to matter." He folded the map and stuffed it into his back pocket. Then he looked over at his bike, the same beat-up thing that had carried them through the night. The chain was slipping more often now, one pedal was bent inward. But it had carried him this far, and it wasn't quitting now. He wheeled it forward, tightened the bungee cord on the basket, and patted the seat. "Ready for part 2? Emily nodded, trying to look brave, though her lip quivered slightly. He saw it, but didn't say anything. Instead, he handed her a pair of gloves with the fingers missing and helped her onto the bike. This time she sat behind him, arms wrapped around his waist. They moved through alleyways first, weaving around dumpsters and potholes, avoiding the main roads, but as the sun rose higher, their world began to shrink. People emerged, doors opened, eyes noticed, and Malik started to feel the weight of it. How out of place they both were, even now, especially now. They stopped once to rest behind a boarded-up store. Emily took slow sips from a water bottle he'd salvaged the week before. Her hands trembled less now. She looked at him and asked, "Why are you helping me?" The question caught him mid-chew on a stale granola bar. He paused, then shrugged. "I don't know," he said softly. "Maybe, 'cause someone should." Emily watched him for a moment, then leaned her head against his back. "You're a good person." Malik didn't answer, because part of him wasn't sure if he believed that. He was just a kid doing what felt right, but hearing it, those words, it felt like something rare, something warm. They continued on, block after block, asking for directions in bits and pieces. Most people waved them off. One old woman looked suspiciously at them before muttering, "Keep moving." Malik didn't blame her. He wouldn't trust 2 ragged kids either. But bit by bit they made progress. It was past noon when they finally reached the edge of Glen Ridge. The sidewalks smoother, the houses wider apart, cars parked neatly in driveways. Malik's hands tightened on the handlebars. This was not his world, not even close. Every step forward here felt heavier. He turned to Emily. "We're close, right?" She nodded eagerly. "It's on the hill," she said. "White gate, big trees, I remember." Malik stared up the road and saw it, the gate, the driveway, the stone mailbox. He took a deep breath. And in that breath, the air changed. A black SUV turned onto the road behind them, tinted windows. Slowing down, Malik didn't move. His heart pounded. He didn't know if it was the kidnappers, a security patrol, or someone else, but he knew one thing. He had to get Emily home, now. He turned back to her. "Hold tight," he whispered. And with one final push, the bike rattled up the hill toward the gate, the city stretching out behind them like a giant waiting to wake. The driveway curved gently uphill, flanked by perfectly trimmed hedges and 2 massive oak trees that seemed to bow in quiet judgment. As the front tire of Malik's bike crossed the first paving stone, he felt it, an invisible boundary, like stepping from the shadows into someone else's dream. The air smelled different here, cleaner, quieter, too quiet. Behind him, Emily shifted slightly, her fingers tightening on his jacket. "That's it," she whispered, pointing. "That's my house." At the top of the hill stood a 3-story white brick estate, tall windows glittering in the sunlight like silent watchers. The porch stretched wide with columns holding up a balcony where flower pots spilled over with vibrant color. A white iron gate stood halfway open, and from it hung a yellow ribbon. Malik's eyes caught it before anything else, flapping gently in the breeze like a beacon. There were people on the lawn, adults, suited men with earpieces, a woman pacing, clutching a phone with trembling hands, and a man, tall, well-built, graying at the temples, standing frozen at the edge of the porch, staring toward the hill. Malik slowed to a stop just outside the gate. For a moment, he didn't move, didn't breathe. Because this wasn't his world. This was the kind of house you only ever saw through fences or in magazines left behind at laundromats. This was marble floors and carpet you weren't allowed to step on. This was alarm systems, private school, security details. And he, a boy in torn jeans, grease-stained hoodie, skin dark as the pavement, wasn't meant to set foot here. Then he felt Emily shift again, heard her voice, small but steady. "That's my daddy." And before Malik could say anything, she swung her legs off the bike and ran forward, arms outstretched. "Daddy!" The man on the porch didn't even hesitate. He launched down the steps, sprinted across the lawn, and scooped her up mid-run with a cry that broke the quiet open like glass. "Emily! Oh, God, baby girl!" The entire yard seemed to erupt. The woman with the phone screamed. Two men in suits shouted into their earpieces. A younger man ran down the hill toward Malik, waving. Malik stepped back instinctively, hands raised. "I didn't do anything," he blurted, voice cracking. But Emily, still in her father's arms, turned and shouted over the commotion. "He saved me! Don't hurt him! He's my friend!" That changed everything. The young man slowed, the suits stopped short, and then, just like that, all eyes were on Malik. Emily's mother rushed forward next, tears streaking down her cheeks, makeup smeared. She kissed Emily's forehead over and over, clutched her like she might vanish again. When her gaze finally found Malik, she froze. For a moment she said nothing, just looked at him, taking in the mismatched clothes, the dirt, the suspicion. But then Emily reached over her father's shoulder and pointed again. "He found me. He took care of me. He gave me his blanket." Malik didn't know what to do with that. He shifted uncomfortably, glanced down at his shoes, suddenly aware of every rip and tear on his body. A man in a suit approached more calmly now. Tall, black sunglasses, voice firm but polite. "What's your name, son?" Malik hesitated, unsure whether to speak. Then, quietly, "Malik." The man nodded. "Malik, these folks would like to thank you." Emily's father stepped forward, his daughter still clinging to him. He extended a hand. "I'm Charles Davenport," he said, voice thick with emotion. "That's my daughter. And you brought her home?" Malik stared at the hand, then slowly reached out. Their palms met, dark and calloused against pale and manicured. And for a moment, something unspoken passed between them. A boy who had nothing, a father who almost lost everything, and the quiet, powerful truth that neither would ever forget this moment. "Come inside," Charles said, guiding him toward the porch. "You need to rest. You look like you've been through a war." Malik shook his head. "I'm okay." But his knees wobbled. His body, exhausted from adrenaline and effort, was starting to give in. Emily's mother placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Please," she said softly, "just let us thank you however we can." Malik looked past them, to the massive double doors opening wide, warm light spilling out like a promise. For a second he saw his reflection in the polished glass, small, dirty, hunched, and didn't recognize himself. Because no one had ever opened a door like that for him, not once. He stepped inside, and in that moment, as the doors closed behind him, the world shifted. For Malik, who had known only cold concrete and distrustful eyes, this was not just a house. It was something else. A threshold between the life he had lived and something entirely unknown. But he didn't know yet what waited on the other side. Not really. Because the story wasn't over. Not yet. The warmth inside the Davenport house hit Malik like a memory he'd forgotten how to feel. Carpet under his shoes, the scent of cinnamon and fresh laundry, walls lined with framed photographs, birthdays, beach trips, laughter frozen in time. A woman in an apron rushed forward, gasping softly when she saw Emily in her father's arms. "She's safe?" Someone whispered behind him, and Malik didn't know if they meant her or him for a moment. He stood there in the foyer, unsure what to do with his hands, unsure where to look, unsure if this was real. But then Emily, wrapped in a blanket now, waved at him from the couch. "Come, sit by me," she said, voice hoarse but sweet. He moved slowly, unsure if he was allowed, until Charles gestured toward the soft armchair next to her. And just like that he sat. In a room that looked like it belonged in a movie, in a family he wasn't part of, in a world that had never belonged to him. The next hour passed in pieces. Questions. Gentle voices. A nurse who'd been called in to check Emily and insisted on checking Malik too. He refused at first, but relented when she pointed out the scratches on his leg. There were sandwiches, real ones with meat and lettuce and mayo, and hot tea with honey that made his throat feel like it was finally being listened to. Emily stayed close. Her hand rested lightly on the armrest between them, like a silent promise. She told her parents everything, the junkyard, the fever, the bike ride. Every time she said Malik's name, her voice lifted just a little more, and every time she did, the room leaned toward him, softened a little more. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low again and bathed the living room in gold, Charles and his wife sat across from Malik. The air was quiet, not heavy, just full of things unsaid. Charles cleared his throat. "Malik," he began, voice calm but serious, "we don't know everything you've been through, and we won't pretend to understand, but what you did for our daughter, we can never repay that. Not with money, not with gifts." He paused, glanced at his wife, who nodded. "But maybe with something else?" Malik blinked, wary. "What do you mean?" Charles leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. "We've spoken with the authorities. The men who took Emily were found and arrested. Your name's clean. You won't have to hide anymore." That alone nearly knocked the air out of him. For so long, survival had meant silence, avoidance. Now he was being told he could stand in the light. But Charles wasn't finished. "We've also spoken to the courts," he said. "There's a process, of course. But if you want, if you're willing, we'd like to welcome you into our family, officially, as our son." The words didn't register right away. They sat in the air, hovering, too big to fit into Malik's ears. He stared at Charles, then at Emily's mother, who was smiling through quiet tears, then at Emily, who simply said, "Please say yes." His heart pounded so hard he thought it might break something inside him. For years he had wandered, invisible. For months he had survived without anyone saying his name like it mattered. And now? They were offering him not just a roof, not just protection, but a place, a name, a belonging. He opened his mouth. No sound came. Then quietly he whispered, "You really want me?" Charles didn't hesitate. "More than anything?" Malik swallowed, eyes glassy. He didn't cry, not fully, but something inside him cracked open. He nodded. That night, for the first time in a very long time, Malik slept in a bed. The sheets smelled like lavender. The room was small but warm. There were clothes folded neatly on a chair. A photo frame beside the lamp already held a picture of him and Emily taken just hours before, and on the door someone had taped a piece of paper. It read, "Malik, your room," in marker, all caps, like a declaration, like it was meant to be. Weeks passed. His paperwork went through. He was enrolled in school, given a new backpack, new shoes, a new life. But not everything changed. He still kept his bike, rusty and bent, a relic of the journey that saved them both. Sometimes he and Emily rode it just for fun. Down the same alley where he first found her, she insisted on sitting in the front basket like old times, and Malik always let her, grinning as she squealed with laughter. Then came a spring afternoon, 1 month after everything, when a silver plaque was quietly added to the front gate. It bore the family name, the Davenports. But now, beneath it, engraved with care, was a second line, Malik Elijah Davenport. And just like that, the boy who had once been no one became someone whose name belonged to a home, a name on a gate, a name in a family, a name that meant something. Because sometimes the most extraordinary things come not from magic, but from the purest kind of kindness, the kind that asks for nothing and gives everything. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.